it all down, I'm Count Zero. Now, I was on vacation last weekend, so I wasn't able to get any video games in, but that's okay. I was able to get some reading in, and so for this week, I have a book review for you. This book is one of the books that's nominated for this year's Hugo Awards, which are being given out this weekend at WorldCon. Now, this is the second of the 6 books that have been nominated that I'm reviewed. So yeah, I'm probably not going to get all of these reviews in on time. Sorry about that. The book which I have this week is Blackout, written by Connie Willis, who previously won a Hugo and a Nebula Award for an earlier book in this series, Doomsday Book. All these books involve time-traveling historians, and so before I get into the book itself, I want to talk to you a little bit about time travel and my thoughts about this genre in general. Now, while I'm a fan of science fiction, time travel stories are kind of love it or hate it thing for me. These stories tend to fall into one of a few categories. Number 1, fix the future. With this little subgenre of time travel, characters from the future come to our time to fix something bad about their future. It could be to save someone from being killed, like in the Terminator films, or it could be to bring something from the present to the future, like in Star Trek IV. Sometimes these stories can be done to provide some sort of commentary on modern society through the time traveler who, as an outsider, can make observation of things that we take for granted. It can be pollution, it can be dependence on technology, it could be anything. Sometimes this commentary can get really blunt and anvilicious, but depending on what they're dropping the anvil about, that may not be too bad. Number 2, alternate history. With this subgenre, characters from the future go back to our past and do something to change history, thus causing dramatic changes to the world as we know it. This genre's best known creator of works is Harry Turtledove, whose books like The Guns of the South, among others, have achieved great critical success and are very popular, and I have to admit that I haven't read them myself, so I can't speak for their quality as far as how I see it. But it's a genre which I do find interesting and I need to get around to reading at some point. Number 3 is I describe as butterfly effect. Basically, characters do short-term time travel within their own lifespan. It could be a span of a few weeks, days, months, or even years going back to their childhood. And sometimes this can be tragic. From the plot synopsis I've read of the film Butterfly Effect, things go badly for our time-traveling main character. On the other hand, with the film The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, the results of this time travel are more, and thus the tone of the story, are more slightly melancholic and bittersweet. It tugs at the heartstrings more than making you sad and depressed. Number 4 can be described based off the defining work of this little subgenre, and that is H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. Now, with this subgenre, a character contemporaneous to the writer, if not the reader, travels forward in time to some sort of future society, which it could be a dystopian police state, or, as in the case of the book which started this genre, The Time Machine, it could travel to a society that is basically post-apocalyptic, like with the Time Machine, the Morlocks and Eloi. Usually society tends to be crappy, and it tends to be somewhat it may be anvilicious in its commentary about societal developments, maybe not. It really depends on the writer and the way it goes. And finally, there is observational or anthropological science time travel fiction. This is where characters go back in time and serve as an audience perspective character for something in our past. So, traveling to, for example, World War II, Victorian England, or some other time period, and looking at the way society was there with our eyes. And usually with this also, they tend to try to avoid changing history. Oftentimes what happens is something will cause them to stay longer than they'd like because of some technical difficulty or something else, and thus the conflict there becomes trying to stick around and survive until you can be rescued or get back while keeping your head down and not changing historical events. This basically is the category which Connie Willis's books fall into. 1 through 4 can be really fun. They each have their own little interesting ways of providing social commentary. 5 is really hit or miss. It all depends on the time period that you're choosing. If it's a time period that has been heavily treaded upon in historical fiction, or through other time travel stories, it can get really tedious and really bogged down. You lose interest if it's something where we've already gotten so much historical insight about this period through other writers and other works that you can't comment on it anymore. You can't really do historical commentary on racism on the Civil War period and have anything new to say when everyone else has said it over and over and over again, as an example. And so, basically this brings me to Blackout, because now this is a continuation of Connie Willis's, again, earlier time-traveling historian novels. It started with Doomsday Book. There was a short story before it, but let's just focus on the novels. Started with Doomsday Book, and then moved on to this novel, To Say Nothing of the Dog, which was kind of more of a Victorian, with some references to World War II involved there as well. This book is set in World War II during the Blitz, and involves a trio of historians sent back to various places in the United Kingdom to cover various stuff and learn things. One person's going to Dunkirk. Another person goes to rural England and to basically study the evacuees. If you've seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you're kind of familiar with this concept. And another person is in London itself during the Blitz to study London shopgirls. And bad things happen. They lose track of their drop sites. They get basically stranded in time in basically World War II Britain for a long period of time. And basically that's where things fall apart. This book is tedious, to say the least. They set up a bunch of things in this book which look like they'll have some interesting consequences relating to changing history, related to various other stuff, which isn't paid up on. We get, at least within this book, we get a news story and discussion of stuff at the beginning of the book before they've ever gone back in time, talking about how that it may actually be possible to change the past. Earlier books have established that you might not be able to change history through time travel. And we get discussions here where early on, before everyone goes back in time, everyone's jumps get shuffled around due to scheduling difficulties and that sort of thing, and they don't really go into the whys of that in this book. And every time this comes up, I get the impression they're going to go someplace with this. We're going to get something out of this, some sort of narrative discussion to make this more interesting. And they really, really don't. Again, the fact that they're going to World War II during the Blitz doesn't help things. I've lost count of the number of non-fiction books, fiction books, movies, television series, and so forth that have been set in London during the Blitz and been busy discussing the Blitz and the life of people during the Blitz and all that sort of stuff. There is nothing you can tell me about or show me in fiction about the Blitz and the way people responded to the Blitz that I haven't necessarily seen. I mean, maybe probably showing me something, but I'm not getting it here. I mean, fact is, human history is long and vast, and there's many, many periods of human history that you could put this in that haven't been done to death in historical fiction or time travel fiction. Civil War, done to death. World War II, World War I, done to death. But there's other places you can do this. You could do, just to name two, stick with two of them. There is Russia during the Communist Revolution. I haven't heard seen any time travel stories going back there. Modern day Germany, what is now modern day Germany, but what was then the Holy Roman Empire during the 30 Years' War. Hasn't been done. We haven't even done a time travel story with pirates. Pirates are cool. Pirates are the hip and happening thing. Go back in time, have them dealing with pirates. Put them in Port Royal before the earthquakes that happened that basically leveled the city, and have them discuss and have the discussion be about, okay, what's a pirate economy like when you're dealing with a city that basically exists based on the traffic of pirates and the looting and success of pirates for their economy. What does the city become? What happens there? What do you get? Do you get like a Deadwood sort of gold rush economy? Do you get something different? No, boom, you have a period of history which is interesting to people, but hasn't really been done to death in the sense of really doing a historical profile and that sort of thing. With a audience perspective character who is who is modern and provides some or futuristic but somewhat modern, providing some modern sensibilities to analyze the situation in. We don't get that. And frankly, what doesn't help this at all is that Blackout is not actually one book. It is 2 books. And they're not small books. Basically, Connie Willis with this, the book is twice as long as it really needs to be. Because before I did this review, I went to Wikipedia. I took a look at this to see, okay, since nothing happens here, what happens here? And basically, this is the setup. This introduces the characters, this introduces the setting, which we don't really need to know. It's World War II London. It's World War II England. We get it. And if you're British and reading this, you've been taught this over and over again in school. This has been drummed into you by your fiction, by the stuff you've read as a kid. So there's this. And then, this book, now that everything's been established, this is where everything happens. This is the plot, the narrative gist of this. The problem is, if I don't want to finish reading this book, if this book doesn't hook me, then this book fails. So, the question is this, and as far as for judging this, this is half the story, but this is its own separate book. You can read this on its own, and then move on to this, and you have to buy this separately. There is no anthology volume. You have to shell out, how much does this cost on the cover? Does this have a cover price on this that I can see? Okay, this is $26, $30 if you're in Canada. This one's about the same price. So, together, you're shelling out $50 for both these books. If the first one isn't interesting, if the first one doesn't catch your attention, doesn't hook you, doesn't capture your imagination, why do you want to sell out basically another $26 to get the interesting bits for characters who you don't quite care about, who you aren't quite interested in? Basically, in short, I cannot in good conscience recommend this. Now, both these books were nominated together for the Hugo Awards. So technically, if you want to get the full Hugo picture, you need both of these. The problem is, well, I can understand why they nominated them both for one slot. These are both one combined story. You need to read this in order to get to this. But this one's got the cool stuff and interesting bits and tons of things. This is where the history changing sort of comes in. But this one sets everything up, but is dull and tedious and a slog to read through. And ultimately, that's the problem. Is I'm not reviewing both of them at this time. I've only read this one. But this one doesn't cut the mustard. This one fails. This one simply doesn't do what it needs to do. It's a dull slog of a book. With a dull video game or a boring video game, you can play it with somebody else. Or you could even have somebody sitting next to you on the couch and discussing it with you. It's an experience that can be shared. Same with a movie. A book unless you're reading it aloud, which actually slows down the process of going through it, or if you're listening to an audiobook, it's a one-person thing. You're going it alone. And consequently, when a book's a dull, depressing slog, it's not worth it. It simply isn't worth it. And because of that, I cannot recommend Blackout. Skip it. If you want to go read one of the Hugo Award nominees from this year, go read The Dervish House instead. And I'm going to try and read some of the other ones, other books that are nominated, and hopefully get reviews of them up soon. But, I mean, unless one of the books that I've already reviewed wins, I'm not going to get the winner in time. Anyway, next week I'm going to try and get a little discussion up, review up of The Bourne Conspiracy. And then from there, we'll see how things go, as far as games and novels from there. Until next time, I'm Count Zero, and thank you for watching.